Thank you very much. Thank you. It's such a privilege to be here. I love this conference, and this is, Steffi says, my 5th year here, and I look forward to it every year, so it's wonderful. So let me give you I'll give you an industry overview, but before that, one of the things that's so great about this conference is it really is a celebration of creativity and ingenuity and productivity. It's very inspiring every year, as Steffi said, and there's just so much to celebrate. And just as one example from the industrial side of things, if you go back 150 years to the Industrial Revolution, all this incredible progress and creativity, what you find is that we collectively, humanity, have saved ourselves 30 hours of time per week through our productivity. And just to make sure you're all awake this morning, and if you are, I have to say I compliment you. I don't know how everybody does it every time after the amazing chairman's dinner and the events last night. So you're all awake, it's great. But what do you think we do with the 30 hours that we have saved ourselves over the last 150 years? That's right. We spend 28 of those hours watching television. So there's lots of room for further improvement. And I think some people would say, yes, we want to be able to watch television 80 hours a week, not just 28 hours a week. So we have to get going on the productivity, so we'll be able to do that. So what I'm going to talk about, though, is the digital revolution, which is continuing apace. It is very much just at the beginning, although it's been an amazing 20 years to watch. It's just the pace of innovation has been staggering. But if you look globally, there are now about 3 billion people connected. That leaves 4 billion to go. We will be there in relatively short order. Attention across media continues to shift from traditional media to digital, and especially to mobile. If you look at all of the bars there that are declining, that's all traditional media. Everything is now shifting to mobile. The whole world is changing as a result of that. And most importantly, this is a generational shift. It turns out that our media habits that we develop as kids and young adults tend to stick with us through life. For example, at Business Insider, Steffi was very nice to give us the advertisement at the beginning. We now are the #1 business publication in the United States in terms of readership, and part of that is because we have this new generation of executives that are coming in and looking for new brands to read, and digital is very different. We are writing a lot of our stuff for them, and ultimately, we have a lot of younger folks. We love our competitors, but what we like to say is if you want to reach retired people, some of our competitors are a great way to do it, but if you want to reach today's executives, then come to Business Insider. But this shift I'll talk a little bit more about in the beginning. It's profoundly important. So very briefly, I have lots of slides. You don't have to stare at the slides to figure out what they're going on. I will post the presentation on the DLD site, so if you can look at them in detail if you want. But let's just go quickly through some of the different trends in digital right now, in digital media in particular. So smartphone sales still growing very rapidly worldwide. Tablet sales surprisingly have slowed down, and I'll talk about for some of the reasons. PC sales have been declining for years now as a result of all this. Phablets, the big phones, are starting to replace the small smartphones. You remember a few years ago when Apple told us, no, you can only have a 4-inch phone. That's the perfect size. No one would ever want a bigger phone than that. And another innovator came out with a big phone, and suddenly everybody wants a big phone. And now finally, for us folks who have gotten addicted to Apple, Apple has its own big phone. And it does fit in the hand, and it's okay, and we don't have to believe all the things that are told us by marketing departments. Big phones are good, and they're taking over the world. TVs are now going to be connected. Almost half of the TVs in the United States are now smart TVs, so-called smart TVs. Maybe that's why we spend 28 hours in front of them. Wearables, in general, I'm sorry to say, have been very overhyped. They have not lived up to the hype. Maybe Apple's smartwatch will counter that, but they are still growing rapidly, and over the next few years should continue to do that. Cars are increasingly connected and increasingly smart. Had the pleasure of sitting next to a senior executive from BMW last night, and I hate to tell you, but she said secretly, your BMW is a better driver than you are. So they're just sort of waiting to break that truth to you, and then we can just turn on the switch and the BMW will drive, and there will be far fewer accidents, and the world will improve from that. Internet of Things, the next big move over the next 20 years, pretty much everything is going to have a chip in it and be connected. We have no real conception of what that's going to be like, but it seems as though that is definitely the way we're headed. So where are we in the mobile device cycle? Everything goes through an adoption cycle. Where are we in that? Developed markets for smartphones are actually becoming mature now. There's a big slowdown in smartphone markets. Most of the growth has actually moved to China and India and emerging markets. This is creating profound change in some of the manufacturers. China, staggeringly huge, already twice the size of the United States market. We used to think of ourselves as being so huge. We are dwarfed by the market in China. And very importantly, Chinese companies now sell 25% of the smartphones in the world. This is a big trend that over the next 5 to 10 years, a lot of these companies will go way beyond China and ultimately shake up a lot of the smartphone industry. Prices are dropping fast, which helps a lot of the new competitors. As a result, iPhone sales have slowed a lot. The iPhone 6 will change this chart for a couple of quarters, but this trend is likely to continue. In gadgets and electronics, you always have this pressure for lower and lower prices, and that will likely continue. Tablet growth, as I mentioned, is really stopped. If you talked 3 or 4 years ago, people would say, oh, Apple is not the iPhone company, they are the iPad company. It will be even bigger than the iPhone. That is not, in fact, proven to be the case. And iPad sales have gone into what we euphemistically describe as negative growth, which is to say the iPad is actually shrinking now. Why is that? Lots of questions as to what's going on in the tablet market. 3 reasons that we can come up with. 1, there's a much longer upgrade cycle. These tablets last a long time. You don't need to replace them every couple of years. 2, we now have these bigger smartphones that are cannibalizing some of what tablets used to do. And then 3, generally, they're still expensive. The Kindle's selling incredibly well, but it's much cheaper. Tablets should continue to get cheaper, and that will help with the adoption. So going into media for a few minutes. There's one law of media over the history of all media, and that is money ultimately follows eyeballs. Whatever attention changes, the money will follow. Ad spending in the United States very gradually but steadily is moving to digital. This is the overall pie of ad spending. There's a teeny bit of mobile at the bottom, but a big percentage of it is already digital. Print ads have fallen off a cliff. There's no saving that in the United States, at least. Google now is bigger than all newspapers and all magazines in the United States. Just staggering. Google, in fact, now dwarfs what I was raised to think was big media. I used to think Time Warner was a big media company. Turns out it's a tiny media company relative to Google. And some of these other companies that I grew up with barely register on the scale. Google is, in fact, now almost half the size of all global television advertising. Just a staggering amount of power in one company's hands. So for years, everyone in the TV industry has sort of been laughing at digital as we all say, oh, the death of TV is coming. And it's true, should have been laughed at because it has taken a very long time. But things now, at least in the United States, really are starting to change. If you look at ratings for the big broadcast networks in the United States, steady downturn over the last 5 to 7 years. Facebook now reaches more young people in the United States every day than the broadcast networks. Just inconceivable to think of that 5 years ago. Netflix now has more subscribers in the United States than HBO and is on its way globally to continuing to build that. YouTube reaches more of the younger millennial generation than any cable network in the United States. iTunes and Netflix now, as businesses, people used to say, oh, yes, well, those digital things, yes, they reach a lot of people, but there's no business there. Now there is a business there, and in fact, some of the bigger ones are now becoming businesses the size that even TV executives would be impressed by, and they will continue to grow from there. YouTube, for example, still in the middle, is starting to close in on CBS, which is one of our big broadcast networks in the United States. So eyeballs are moving, attention is shifting. Right now, the spending has not moved. That big green area in that chart is television spending. It's incredibly strong still. Tiny sliver of digital at the bottom. But I would respectfully suggest that it is only a matter of time. And why is that? We go back to our generational shift. Let me just spend 1 minute on this chart. So if you look at the average of all adults, how they spend their time with different media, the bar on the left, you find that still half of it is television. Very big bunch. You got some radio, a little bit of print, some computer usage and smartphone, but it's relatively balanced. But then you break that down by age. You look at the bar in the middle. These are the folks who were reared on television and print, age 75 and up. They still just watch television. They even read print, as hard as it is to believe. And they hold on to radio, tiny little bit of computer usage, but not a lot. But then you go to age 16 to 24. It is pretty much a tiny bit of television and all digital, with the majority of that digital on mobile. As those folks age, they're not going to suddenly start shifting to traditional TV. They are going to take their habits with them. So over the next 20 years, to go to the theme of the conference, we are just at the beginning of this shift. And the money will follow. It'll take a long time, but it will follow. Still a lot of money left in print and a lot of money left in television. Okay, very quickly, just to run through some of the big media trends. Most of the growth in media now for digital is mobile. Mobile, we now spend an hour a day on our smartphones, a lot of time that media companies have to access that they didn't have an opportunity to access before. Mobile has taken the digital day from 9 to 5 at work and made it 18 hours a day. Our smartphones are often right next to us in bed. We pick them up. It's the last thing we do before we go to sleep. So that's good news for media companies trying to reach folks. Each device, interestingly, has a different prime time. The computer still, the big thing is at lunchtime is the peak time. Mobiles throughout the day. Tablets are in the evening. But if you think about it as a media company, what we have become is a multi-screen world. It's not mobile or fixed or TV. It is just multiple screens. You want to reach people through those same screens. Messaging, as a result of this, is exploding. Social network is exploding. Video is exploding. Mobile is driving all of Facebook's growth. We had Travis Kalanick yesterday talk about the amazing growth at Uber, and it is just staggering to watch that company. He downplayed it. Most people have never seen a company grow like this in the past. Who's winning in this? Google and Facebook clearly are winning. Google is still, that green bar is Google's share of overall digital advertising, which is staggering. YouTube, equally staggering dominance of digital video. In fact, it's worth spending a minute on Google. Google pretty much is swallowing the entire world. This is their browser share versus others. Android has amazing worldwide market share. Search share in Europe is staggering. It's like the levels that Microsoft had when everybody talked about the Windows monopoly. Basically, it's swallowing everything. Sometimes you can have too much power. And I think Google has hit that position where they actually have too much. It is attracting lots of unwanted attention. Europeans threatening to break up Google. And it would just point out that if you go back to Microsoft's heyday of power, it was when the government started to attack them that they ultimately weakened, and then the next 10 years, they sort of moved sideways as a result. So the question is, have Google and Facebook won? Is it all over? Should we just give up? No, not necessarily. Money follows eyeballs. Eyeballs are continuing to move. Google's search growth is finally decelerating after almost 20 years of incredible growth. Desktop queries in the US are dropping. No one uses Facebook anymore, according to a 12-year-old authority in my house. I said, well, why is that? And well, the parents are on Facebook. It's not cool, and so forth. So what do you use? I asked this 12-year-old expert. She said, well, Instagram. I said, well, why Instagram? She said, well, because parents don't know Instagram is a social network. They see that little picture of the camera, they think it's a photo app, so you can hide in there. Although she complained that some parents are now infiltrating Instagram. It's terrible. So I asked her, what do people use Tumblr for? I don't know. She said, well, that's mainly for creepy people and fandom. I don't think David Karp would agree with that, but that's the view from the 12-year-old slot. And I also asked her, I said, do people make phone calls anymore? Like, you got a phone at age 12. Does anyone use it? Oh, no. Everybody has a phone number, but they're for texting now. No one would actually ever want to call. So this new generation is 100% digital. They're going to grow for several decades. It's just a wonderful future for digital. So, but everybody still asks, but it's just another bubble, right? So we're going to wake up, just going to be a heap of wreckage like there was after 1999, 2000. No, it isn't, with a qualification. So the late 1990s, this is venture capital investing. Late 1990s was a bubble. That's what bubbles look like. Look at that change in trend relative to all other history. This is a 30-year chart we're looking at. What we are in now is a boom. It's a very good boom, very healthy, lots going on, but it is a boom. It is not a bubble. But, and here's the qualification, progress has always been cyclical. Booms are always followed by busts. So, if we look at the 1980s, boom, and then bust. We look at the 1990s, boom, then bubble, and then bust. We look at 2000 to 2009, nice long boom, ended with a bust. Now, where are we here? We have a nice long boom going on 7 to 8 years now. That's great. Someday, it is going to end in a bust. I know exactly when it's going to end. But I want to capitalize on that knowledge. I have no idea. It could be 2 to 3 years. Who knows? But someday, probably soon, it's going to end. So money's going to become scarce. Everything's going to get tough. As Warren Buffett would say, some folks are going to get caught swimming naked. So what do? How do you survive knowing that a bust is going to come at some point? I would suggest that you hope for the best, always as a manager, and you prepare for the worst. You know that it might be coming. You raise money when you can, not when you have to. And ultimately, you try not to get caught swimming naked, unless you want to get caught swimming naked, which I'm sure a lot of people would. But then you will be in this environment where you are strong, everybody else is weak, and then you can go on and get better every day. There's a lot of value that actually is created from busts. That's an industry overview. Again, pretty huge privilege to be here. Thank you very much, Steffi, and everybody for having me. Thank you.